I am so thrilled to be joined by our next guest. I think this person does it all. They write, they direct, they produce. In a moment, I'm going to ask them if they did that wonderful painting behind them. Of course, we are here with fantastic Canadian filmmaker, Hoda Elatawi. Hoda, how are you today?
I'm good and really happy to be here talking to you, Keith. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, of course, I did you do that painting behind you?
I wish I could take credit for that and say I'm a painter as well and an artist, but it's not mine, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, it's good to know that you have some limitations. Okay, so we are here to talk about your new project. Of course, it is So You Want to Be a Muslim. This is a very interesting film and interesting in a good way. That's always a wild word. It's like interesting. It
Yeah, what
has
does
that
that mean?
connotation, but no, this is a very strong film, and I was very excited to check it out. And now, of course, have the opportunity to come in and discuss it with you. I wanted to find out first of all, what is it that inspired this film?
Good question. So, a few years back, I was finishing up a film called Maniza in the Middle, which you may recollect, and I had done it, made the film for a documentary channel as well, just like this film. And that was a film about Muslim identity, and it was following a character as she navigated her intersectionality, basically. And in the course of doing that film, I met a gentleman who was a convert to Islam. And it got me thinking, and that's kind of what sort of kickstarted this new project. So You Want to Be a Muslim. I was like, that's interesting. As he told me his story, I was like, I'd love to find out more. And, what, who and why are people converting to Islam? And that was sort of the impetus for the film.
Excellent.
And sorry, I'll just add one other thing.
Mhm.
I was being interviewed for Maniza in the Middle by a writer for a publication called The Muslim Link. And as it turned out, the writer Khadija mentioned to me, oh, by the way, my mother is a convert. And so that was sort of the second thing. It was like, okay, that checked off a couple of boxes. Like the first one was the gentleman I'd met and I was fascinated. And then, it was sort of serendipitous.
That's fantastic. So tell the people what is you want to be a Muslim. What is the film about? I know we've kind of touched on it, but full description.
Yeah, so the film really, it's a feature doc, I'll mention that. So it's 88 minutes long. And it takes a look at why do people choose to convert or revert, and we'll talk about that word in a little bit, or embrace Islam at a time where certainly in the last couple of, well, more than a couple of years, Islamophobia is at an all-time high. Since, post 9/11, Muslims have had struggles and challenges, as we know. Representations in the media and pop culture of Muslims have been skewed, to put it mildly. And so I was really interested in finding out, like, why would people choose to convert to religion that, arguably has had such the microscope on it and, you know, it's almost controversial, really. And so that's kind of what the film is about. We follow the stories of four characters, five really. One of them is they're a couple, and over the course of time, and really, it's a portraiture of these five people's stories. Why they chose the journey that they did. What are some of the challenges that they faced? Why, what was sort of relatable to them about the religion Islam? And at the end of the day, what I wanted to do with the film was challenge stereotypes around who Muslims are, but particularly um, converts. And we know this, when we hear about a woman converting to Islam, the images that might come across in our heads are things like, suicide vest or, being oppressed. If we hear about a man converting to Islam, we think radicalization. We think, maybe, going to be a freedom fighter with ISIS or something. Those are some of the things that I think are reinforced through pop culture and media. And so I really wanted to challenge some of those perceptions out there. And I think that and also show the diversity of the Muslim community. And I think my characters do that really beautifully. And I think they're very relatable. So the film is a portraiture. I think it's light, it's intimate. It has its, light, funny moments and more emotional moments. So I think I hope people will connect with it. And I hope that it will shed some light on, people have questions about, who are Muslims and what's this all about, I think, and I hope it will address some of those questions.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Now, as you mentioned, we get to meet several groups of people in this. Tell me about casting. How did you go about finding the different people that are featured in this film? Because they're opening up and we're having like some really great discussion throughout this film with these wonderful individuals. So, how did you go about like finding these people to showcase in your film?
Well, it was a challenge and a journey, and it was over a number of years. And I will say, I started researching in probably as early as 2015, I believe, and I found my first two characters, and a lot of it's word of mouth. And then I did a few development stages and some filming, and then COVID hit and everything was interrupted. And then once things started back up in terms of filming again, I had to research and find my final characters. So the film actually took quite a long time, which I think worked in it was advantageous in a sense. I didn't mean for it to take that long, but then nobody expected COVID and sort of what came with it. Um, a lot of it's word of mouth, and it takes time to build the relationships. I interviewed literally hundreds of people over the years, and it's kind of like, you make a connection with somebody, the story resonates, or they capture your interest. They are a larger than life character, and it's all those ingredients that say to me they would make a perfect character for the film.
Excellent. Now we talked about one of the challenges of the film in terms of like making parts of it during COVID, but you've made this wonderful film. You've established distribution for it, which we'll talk about in a moment. But what were some of the other challenges that you encountered while you were making this movie?
Um, to be honest, one of the hardest things was getting people to open up about the reasons. And in many instances, it was because either they hadn't told their families about this decision that they'd made, or that there was some maybe disagreement within family members, and they didn't sort of really want to go down that road or expose their stories in that way. They weren't necessarily quite ready. Um, so that was one of the main, I think, reasons or
Mhm.
challenges that made it hard to sort of pin down my characters. COVID, as we mentioned, was one of the other ones. I had found most of my characters pre-COVID, and then once COVID hit, I had to find one more set of characters that had converted more recently, and that became a much harder thing to accomplish. During COVID, people weren't so open about, they were much less open about talking about their personal
Mhm.
stories. They had other concerns, clearly, which is, surviving, making ends meet, surviving COVID, all of those things. So it was much more challenging because of COVID to find that last, it took me a year. It took me a year to find those last characters.
Okay. Now, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. We talked about the converting, but you also mentioned a term reverting. Could you take a moment and speak on that?
Yeah, so and that was interesting. I mean, I'd heard the term, of course, before, but I wasn't super familiar with it. And some Muslims or people who embrace Islam call it reversion because many Muslims believe that everyone is born a Muslim. And then as they start to grow and sort of take different paths, they gravitate towards different religions. But those who call themselves reverts are basically saying,
Mhm.
well, we're just reverting to what we were actually born to be.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why they call themselves reverts.
Excellent. Thank you. I don't want you to give too much away because I sincerely want people to see this film because I think you've made a great movie here, a great piece. And I remember we had an earlier conversation where I said this is something, and I meant it sincerely, that should be shown in school. So I'm glad that that's on the path for this. But without giving too much away, what is one of the takeaways from this film that surprised you? So one of the things that might have come up during your research, your conversations, one of the things that surprised you as you were going through the construction of this film.
I think a few things really, but I think for me, what was underlined the most was a reminder of the diversity of Muslims. Now, as a born Muslim myself, I know that Muslims are diverse. We are not a monolith for sure. And I think oftentimes society tends to see Muslims in that sort of one way. If you're a Muslim, you are this way. If you're a Muslim woman, you are these things. If you're a Muslim man, you are these things. So it was a great reminder of that, like, of, again, that diversity, but also, for me, these films are kind of journey films, to be honest with you. And it is a film also about identity and intersectionality, and it comes from my perspective, and it's a little bit of my searching, for how my layers of identities will work. And so it's always a surprise to see how different people navigate their various identities. And so I know that's sort of a bigger, maybe answer to the question that you had, but I always find that interesting, maybe not surprising, but interesting how people navigate as opposed to how I do it.
Mhm.
And that's part of the journey that I take when I make these kinds of films.
Excellent. Okay, so we've talked about the film. Tell me about the release schedule and when people are going to be able to see this wonderful work of art.
Great. So it is going to air on premiere on the documentary channel, which is my main broadcaster. And the documentary channel, as folks might know, is owned by the CBC. That will be on October the 20th. It will premiere at 9 p.m. with a repeat at midnight. And then it'll have other airings. Like, for example, it'll air on Tuesday at 9 p.m. and there'll be repeats that follow. And then it drops on CBC Gem on October 23rd. And it'll stay on there for a while. So people have lots of, so if you don't have a subscription to the documentary channel, you'll be able to catch it on CBC Gem, which, as folks probably know, is free. So please watch the film. I think you'll learn a lot from it. I think you'll find that the characters are very likable. And you'll be surprised, I think, by the characters, and you will relate, I think, to them as well.
Mhm. I share that. I share that sentiment. I'm excited for people to see this film, as I think it's going to foster a lot of great conversation, which I guess segues into my next question. What do you want people to get out of the film?
Um, I'm hoping that, like you said, it spurs conversations and questions and addresses some of the perceptions or assumptions that people might have about who Muslims are, particularly in the West. So the film really is for a non-Muslim audience, and that's what I hope the film does. Is that people look at it and ask questions, or have this idea of like, wow, I didn't know that, or I totally relate to this story. And to a point that you said earlier, aside from airing on the CBC's platforms and networks, it's also going to be distributed internationally. So we're hoping to give it international, and we're entering film festivals. But we also have an educational distributor whose job is to get it into the classroom. So in post-secondary and secondary classrooms, where again, I think it's a really important film for that will spur great discussion.
No, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Now, we've entered the rapid fire phase of the Keith Whittier interview. So before I let you go, I have a couple of fun questions for you because we always do a
Uh-oh.
rapid fire segment here. These are meant
Okay.
to be nothing but fun. Hoda, have I told you about these questions before we started filming? You have
No,
no
you
idea.
did not. This is a complete surprise.
This is amazing. This is coming at you. I'm very excited. And again, it's fun. So just first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
First question in rapid fire is always the same. So why change it now? Hoda, what is your favorite movie of all time? And because that's a difficult question, I will say if you want to give me a top three, that's fine.
I'm gonna say My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Okay, excellent. There are no wrong answers in rapid fire,
Right.
of course, unless you were to say The Notebook, and then we'd have problems. Okay.
Okay, fair
Uh,
enough.
what do you like to do for fun here in the nation's capital?
I'd love to go for walks because, as you know, Ottawa has amazing walking trails. That's probably one of my favorite things to do, biking once in a while. And of course, going to great restaurants. Ottawa's got, a great growing slew of restaurants, which is fantastic. So I love to do that as well. Going to the movies, the odd time, but, watch a lot of movies at home too. So,
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Now, you might remember this. You produced or one of the producers on a movie called Who's Afraid of Happy Endings. Now, that told the tale of the billion-dollar romance fiction industry. What's the last romantic fiction book that you read?
Um, that's a good question. It's been a while. Um, I'm trying to think. That's a hard one.
Okay.
Come back to me. Come
All
back to
right.
me with that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, we've talked about this before. You write, you produce, you direct. You are all over the big three behind the camera. Did you ever have any sort of desire to be in front of the camera? A lot of times directors cast themselves in a little cameo and things of that nature. Has that ever been of an interest of yours?
Um, Not, yes. I mean, because I studied journalism. So,
Okay.
yes, to be honest, after I finished and I graduated from journalism, what I wanted to do was I wanted to be Anne Medina. And you're probably too young to remember Anne Medina, but she was like a foreign correspondent, a big hero of mine. So I wanted to be, a television journalist.
Mhm.
And then when that quite didn't quite pan out, I ended up doing working in advertising, where, we were making, 30 and 15-second and 30-second and 60-second films, if you will, or commercials. And that just didn't satisfy me. I did it and it was fun, but I wanted to go into something long form. So, long answer is yes. For a period of time, I would have loved to be in front of the camera if I could have, fulfilled that dream. But I really love being behind the camera. And I should mention, I am a new director. This is my second film that I'm directing. I've been producing for years and years, but Minnie's in the Middle was my directorial debut. And so You Want to Be a Muslim is only the second film that I've directed. So, and it's hard. I'm going to say this, like every time I come upon a documentary that I end up directing, I'm like, why am I doing this? Because like producing and writing and directing, it's a lot to juggle because I'm also the president of GAPC Entertainment. So my job is to develop new concepts and bring them in. So it's a lot to juggle, but it's fun. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
I'm going to tell you something right now, just between the two of us. You make the directing piece look very easy because there is absolutely nothing about watching this film where I'm thinking, oh, this is like a second time director or what have you. This movie is beautifully shot and beautifully assembled. So clearly the directing suits you just fine.
I will just please let me say this, that thank you so much for that. But I could not have done it without amazing editors, musicians, cinematographers. Like honestly, like they carried me on their shoulders. They were amazing. I had an amazing team and executive producers. And yeah, I was very lucky that way.
Yeah, I love that. A class act always comes with the team, and thank you for recognizing yours. You are a big deal, let's face it. But is there anybody out there that, because lots of people want to collaborate with you, who would you like to collaborate with? Like, is there a couple of names of people that you'd be interested in collaborating with that you haven't had the opportunity to as yet?
Like in Canada, you mean, or
Wherever, the world's your oyster. You could give me
gosh,
Canada, you could give me global.
I would love to collaborate with, the Eugene Levy team and Andrea Martin team. I
Oh,
mean,
okay,
they're
yeah.
just like really high up on my list because I'm starting to, I'm working on one project which is a scripted comedy with a wonderful new creator, Maisa Houri,
Mhm.
and who brought this amazing idea to us. And uh, so yeah, I'm very inspired by their work. If I ever have had an opportunity to work with them, oh my goodness, like that would be a dream come true for sure.
Amazing, amazing. My last question for you, again, in your position right now, you have been fantastic at helping people up the ladder and being able to collaborate with emerging filmmakers. And I would like to ask, what would the advice that you would want to give to the emerging filmmaker be? Somebody who wants to break into this industry, who wants to be successful, as somebody who has carved out their own success. What level of advice would you give to them?
Well, first I'll say, I'm still trying to carve out my own success. There's always a road ahead. But thank you for saying that. I think I always tell young people or emerging people two things that took me a long time to learn, which was really only pitch something that you're super passionate about, that you absolutely love, because if you don't love it, you can't sell it. And I know this because I had ideas come to me that were fantastic ideas, but they weren't I didn't love them. I wasn't passionate about it. So it was harder to sell them. So love your idea and know your idea inside out. Know your world, like feel it, taste it, touch it, so that who you're pitching to can do the same thing, have that experience it in the same way that you're trying to tell it. And the second thing I tell people is when you are pitching, whether it's, find a partner. If you're brand new, oftentimes it's really a good idea to look if you can find a partner to team up with to help you take that idea and grow it and get it financed and pitch it and all of those wonderful things. And when you're pitching yourself and your idea, let people get to know you. That's first and foremost. We've often seen, and I've done this before, you're pitching someone, you're just like launching right in and you just see their eyes glaze. And it's like, no, what you want to do is you want to allow people to get to know you a little bit because people like to work with people that they like or that they connect with. I mean, that's just a natural thing, right? It seems obvious, but it's not always obvious, and especially if you're starting out.
Mhm.
So let people get to know you and then start telling them about what you're working on.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. And thank you so much for the time today.
Thank
I
you.
wish you nothing but the best with this filming your and your other projects. And I'm very
Hopefully.
excited for people to have the opportunity of checking this out. We of course will put in all of the contact information and all of the information that people need to be able to go and track this film down. We are not going to make it hard for anybody at all because we want
Great.
people to go out and see this. Of course, the name of the movie is So You Want to Be a Muslim. We've had the pleasure of chatting with the director, the co-writer, one of the producers, Hoda Elatawi. Thank you again so much for your time today. We really
Can I just say
appreciate it.
one quick thing?
Of course you can.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to say also a thank you to all our funders because like we can't do it without them. And documentaries are so hard to make. So thanks to the documentary channel and thanks to the Canada Media Fund and In Spirit Foundation and the Hot Docs Partners, who also participated, Ontario Creates Film Fund, and of course the tax credit folks. These are all the many pieces that we had to build and to make it happen, build that mountain. And so we couldn't do it without them. So I have to say thank you to all of our funders and our broadcaster as well. And of course, the entire team that supported us both here and our crews. Amazing. And of course, most of all, our characters who gave me their trust for many years, because it took a few years to make this film. Thank you. And
Excellent.
thank you, Keith.
Thank you.